Greetings, everyone. Today, we're going to talk about what's going on with socialism, capitalism, and communism. But specifically more about socialism, since we see so much about socialism today, and we have actually open socialist candidates for president of the United States. People like Bernie Sanders, who's an open socialist. And then you have people like Elizabeth Warren, who doesn't claim to be socialist, but a lot of her programs and her platform is very socialist in its ideology. And I guess what's even more disturbing is we see how popular these people are, and which is kind of scary if if somebody that knows about the history of socialism, seeing this happen in the United States, and it's pretty disturbing. So a lot of younger people, they actually embrace this, and they actually believe the things that these people are telling them. And I guess I'm just here to give you a different side of the story that you may not have heard. And it's something that we all need to understand about socialism and about capitalism as well. I'm not going to claim that any of these systems are perfect, because they just aren't. They're not perfect. The systems can't be perfect because the people implementing the systems aren't perfect. But there are certain things and certain pitfalls I guess we can avoid when we evaluate socialism relative to capitalism. But I'm going to explain all of these terms right here, and I'm going to use a few websites as a little reference or organizing type of element to keep us on track and to give you something to consider, because this is very, very important stuff we're talking about. It has the potential to affect your life, your children's life, and generations after us for a long time. So this is serious stuff. So the question is socialism better than American free enterprise or capitalism? And so I guess to start off, we ought to define what we're talking about when we say socialism, because some people don't understand what socialism really is or what it means. And basically what socialism is a concept that individuals should not have ownership of land, capital, or industry, but rather that the whole community collectively owns and controls properties, goods, and production in society. So under this plan, all the people are supposed to share equally in the working and the fruits of the labor. So everybody's supposed to work, and then everybody's supposed to get. But what happens is the state is the ones that determine the distribution of work and the distribution of property. Since in these systems, the socialism and communism, everything is owned by the community or the state, not by the people. So understand that. So what socialism really is, if you read about Marx and Engels, the ones who wrote the Communist Manifesto, socialism is supposed to be a bridge in between going from a capitalist society, a free enterprise society, through socialism to get to the perfect state, which is supposed to be communism. And in communism, the ownership of land, capital, and industry, once again, is not owned by the individual. But under communism, the control of these things is not by a community, the local community, is actually by the state government. And under this system, the government has total control of everything produced, and they control what is made, who will receive the goods and services produced. Under this system, you are not allowed to own your own home, your car, your furniture, your clothes, nothing. You don't own anything. The state owns everything, and the state decides what you can use, where you will work. And you don't have any rights. The only rights you have are the rights the government tells you you have. So contrast these systems with capitalism. And under capitalism or free enterprise, individuals own and control land, capital, and production of industry. Individuals are free to purchase their own homes, cars, furniture, and other goods and services they may be interested in. You have total freedom to live where you want, what type of job you want to have, and what type of field you want to pursue, or if you want to start a business, or you want to, whatever you want to do, you can do it. And if you have an idea for a new business or an invention, you're free to pursue it without government interference. At least that's the ideal. Today, we know we have a lot of regulation by government in the United States. On just about any so-called capitalist state, you're going to have a certain amount of regulation. So I guess you can think of, we'll get to that later, where it's kind of a continuum from where you have total 100% government control of everything versus 0% government control, which I guess they call anarchy. So a lot of people think that socialism has never been tried before in the United States, but that's not true. That's even if we discard what was done by FDR in the New Deal. And actually, the Pilgrims back in 1620, they experimented with socialism, a socialist system, because they decided that they wanted to plant a community garden and share the fruits and vegetables equally at the end of the season. And so what the concept was that they would have everybody just work together and share equally at the end of the season from whatever they grew in the garden. But I guess predictably, nobody wanted to work in the garden. Nobody wanted to work in the garden. So because most people were reluctant to do this planting and work to cultivate a garden, and it wasn't theirs. So what happened after the first year, the gardens were not well kept because nobody wanted to do it. And so they had poor crops, poor yield, which led to hunger the next winter. And it got so bad until under this system, 3 years later, the colony was actually facing starvation. So what happened was, I guess the people got together and they decided that they weren't going to try a new system. And so in this system, everybody was given a plot of land, their own personal plot of land that they could garden or that they could cultivate, and then they would get to keep whatever they grew. So the governor, he basically reported that this worked a lot better, this system. And so people, they actually took more interest in it. They knew that they were feeding their families, and so that's when they took a lot more interest in it, and so the result turned out to be a lot better than what they did under the social system. socialism. And so basically the takeaway from this is that what happens is that people, when people own something, they tend to be a lot more conscientious about working at it and developing it than if it's not owned by them. And I mean, that's pretty much human nature. If it's just human nature for you to take more interest in your property than on somebody else's property or nobody's property or commonly held property, where you don't know whether or not your work you're gonna get the fruits of your own labor. So then they go over another example of Apple Computers, how Apple Computers started. The guys, they were basically entrepreneurs. And so they saved up their money. They bought computers, they bought the raw materials, they bought whatever they needed to build their computers or to do the programming on the computers. And they also sought out an investor who helped them, who invested in them, took a chance on them, and that's what they did. And I guess the rest is history. And I guess that's what entrepreneurism is all about, taking risks. We're taking a risk for a possible reward, because it's not guaranteed. So they basically ended up creating great wealth for themselves, their employees, the stockholders, and believe it or not, they actually created a better life or better life experience for the consumers who bought their products. All the people that bought iPads, iPhones, people buy them not at gunpoint, but they buy them because they want them. So what this amounts to is what you call income redistribution, which is when you take from the rich and give to the poor, or you take from the people that create the wealth and you give to other people who did not create it. So what happened is Steve Jobs and his people, they created Apple, they created products, and they created wealth for many people. So contrary to what a lot of us are taught and told by socialists and liberals, is that these people are stealing from the rich. No, he's not stealing. He brought value to the marketplace, and he was rewarded for taking that risk and giving that production. So what liberals or what these socialists will have you believe is that the rich steal money from the poor, and that the rich have to give the money back to the poor since they stole it. Which is, it's not really true. See, what happens with most capitalists, I'm not going to say all capitalists, but most capitalists, they create money through innovation of new ideas, hard work, good investments, good business decisions, sales, it's a lot of work. That's why most people don't do it. So, and I'm not going to say you don't have any crooked business people out there. Because for what I've learned and what I've observed is that you have two different types of business people. You have business people that create value, like a Steve Jobs or Henry Ford or these type of people. But then you have what they call political businessmen who gain advantage based on their connections to politicians and government. And those people, they seek to gain advantage with the regulators so that they can in some way game the system, basically, for lack of a better term. It's basically gaming the system. But most business people are not like that. Most business people are hardworking people who take risk and mostly calculate risk, not just random reckless risk, but it's like a calculation. And those people, I guess they probably deserve to be paid for their efforts for taking a risk, because a lot of people just aren't cut out to take that type of risk. So in human nature, what it is, people tend to be lazy. People are going to try, they call it the path of least resistance. That's what people normally take. Personally, I don't call people lazy. I just say, the way I say it, I say people are energy efficient. They're going to try to expend the least amount of energy possible to get whatever result they're looking for. Because you have to understand, and people implicitly understand, that they only have limited time, they have limited energy. So people don't want to waste it, and they don't want to squander it. So people seek to get the biggest bang for their buck, or the biggest effect per unit energy spent. So on that note, we're going to move on and talk about why socialism and communism don't work. And the bottom line is, if you don't own it, you're not going to work or take care of it. And they give an example of when you look at apartments that are turned to condos. When they're apartments and people don't own it, they're not likely to really put that much into it. They're not going to put their time, money, and effort into maintaining it for the most part. And I can't say everybody, because some people, that's just how they think. They will work. If they're living there, they're going to take care of it. But a lot of people will not. And the renters have the socialist mindset. And the owners have the capitalist mindset. Now, if you look at true socialism or communism, you would never have had Steve Jobs, because he would not have been able to buy the parts for his computer. Also, if he knew his hard work would never allow him to make any more money than his neighbor who sits up, watching TV and eating bonbons sitting on the sofa. Why would he even go through all the massive amount of effort, thinking, risk-taking, for no benefit? It's not going to happen. Nobody's going to do that. It's just not going to happen. So what we find with socialism and communism is that they kill competition, they kill innovation, they kill creativity. Because there's no benefit to you by doing that, by expending your effort. Another thing that people like a Bernie Sanders or AOC or Elizabeth Warren fail to understand is that just because the government passes a law saying that you get free health, everybody gets free health care, that doesn't mean it still doesn't have a cost. And the question becomes, who's going to pay for all this stuff? Elizabeth Warren, she said in one of her speeches that her health care plan, her Health for All health care plan, would cost $52 trillion. That's almost double the GDP, the gross domestic product of the whole United States. Double. So the question becomes, where is this money going to come from? The government doesn't make money. All the government can do is take money from the people that produce it and give it to other people, because the government is not in the business of production. Government is in the business of regulation. And regulation doesn't pay out in and of itself, because the only people you can regulate are people that are creating something. Otherwise, you can regulate all you want, but if you can't regulate money out of a stone or blood out of a stone. It's not going to happen. So one of the things these people don't tell you is that like you take the Soviet Union. Some people may not be old enough to remember the Soviet Union, but the Soviet Union was more than just Russia. It's all those little countries you have, like Ukraine and Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan and all these different. It was a whole bunch of, I can't remember how many of, but they were all under the umbrella of the Soviet Republic. The USSR is what they used to call it. And under that system, the citizens were allowed to keep very little personal goods, if any. Well, very little. So the way it basically worked is that the state would take all business profits and then give the workers ration cards to buy food and clothing. And because of the way this socialism is structured, it was hard. It was hard. Personal items were hard to come by. They had a shortage of TV, shortage of radio, shortage of air conditioning. And they were rationed out by state bureaucrats. And then you have to meet their requirements. It wasn't like it is here in America, where you just go down. If you want an air conditioner or TV or radio, you just go down to Best Buy, or you go to to the store and you'll buy one. Because the companies don't own the stuff, because only the government owns everything. So these are some things people need to think about. So basically, under communism and socialism, you really don't have freedom. Because since the communism or the socialist bureaucrats control all goods and services, that means that the individual, all the people, are at the total and complete mercy of the state, of the government bureaucrats. They're going to determine whether or not you get a TV, whether or not you get an AC unit, whether or not you get a fan, whether or not you get a computer. And then they not only to determine whether you get one or not, they determine which one you get. That they basically control everything. Bureaucrats. You have to get in line for everything. And I'm not going to even get into Occupy Wall Street, but this is that continuum I was telling you about, where you have 100% fascism, communism, socialism, whereby you have 100% government control. They're inversely proportional. The more government control you have in the society, the less personal freedom you have, and vice versa. In order for you to have personal freedom, you can't have government bureaucrats trying to tell you everything you need to do in your life. So what happens is, the more control government has, the less freedom individuals have. So you really need to stop and think. Would you rather have a handout from the government or a paycheck from a business? But I think, the author thinks that most Americans would prefer a job which pays good money over a government handout, and I'd have to agree. And I'll cover one more thing. Some people think that, hey, We don't have communism here or socialism here in the United States. But now I didn't print out an entire all 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto, but if you take a look at it, you'll see that at least 9 of the 10 planks have been enacted in the United States already. So, contrary to popular belief, we don't have capitalism or raw capitalism in the United States. We really never have. It was closer to free enterprise at the turn of the century, I guess, when you had what they or even in the 1800s, when you had what they call robber barons, and where they could amass huge fortunes in railroad industry, telegraph industry, petroleum industry, all these different industries they were creating. I guess it's based on the Industrial Revolution. So us taking a look at the Communist Manifesto, you come to understand that one of the goals of the communists is to overthrow capitalism, which really means that it's a revolution to overthrow capitalist-controlled government. So, but their newer approach is to infiltrate the news media, gain control of the educational system, take control of political parties, and then just take over the government by using, I guess, subterfuge and or using strategy to overthrow the capitalists and convert the capitalist system into a socialist system. So one of the other plank is the abolition of private property, because the government owns the property, or the community, whatever that means, which means you can't own your own land, your own home, your own car, TV, nothing. Notice the next plank is the elimination of the family as a social unit. And I'll probably get into that more so in another episode of this, because I'm not going to cover it right now, because that's a whole topic in and of itself. And they also seek the abolition of all classes, meaning that you won't have a upper class, you don't have a middle class, lower class, everybody's in the same class. But what you really find that happens in these so-called class of societies, that you still have a ruling elite class. It just moves from being producers to being government people. People in the government, bureaucrats in the government, and people, their friends and family. The friends and family plan, which we all learned about. And then you have the masses of the poor working class who don't have any control, they don't have any property, they don't have any wealth, and all they get is basically they get ordered around. So what happens also is, in the Communist Manifesto, they do seek the overthrow of all governments. Although in the USSR, they did have a government, but the government was the communist, so-called communist government, was really socialism, since in communism you don't have a government. And then the other point that they seek is the establishment of a communist order with communal ownership of property in a classless, stateless society. That's their ideal. No classes, no difference in people. It's what you call total egalitarianism, or where everybody's equal. Everybody gets the same thing. Everybody wears the same thing. Everybody is basically the same. It's like trying to cram everybody in one mold. So I guess stop and think about that before you go for the socialist Kool-Aid. In later episodes, I'll cover more of these things in depth and actually show you what the real deal with socialism is. I hope you learned something from this, and we'll talk later.